Aat Vos kommer fra Nederland. Han er arkitekt og biblioteksrådgiver. Han har blant annet stått sentralt i den forvandlingen av avdelingene til Deichmanske i Oslo, og har gått gjennom de seneste årene. En del av dere kjenner sikkert til Biblioteket, som er et bibliotek der det ikke er adgang for noen over 16 år. Vos jobber også med det nye hovedbiblioteket som nå er under bygging i Bjørvika. Og sist, men ikke minst, så har han vært helt sentral i utformingen av biblioteket her i Ulsteinvik. Foredraget blir holdt på engelsk. Please welcome Aat Vos.
Hi. Hello, and thank you for sharing your time. As you can see, we are part of the same team, so we like to blend into the environment. Untitled, ikke snakken norsk. Je kan bestellen café or ale, but that's about it. So I very much like to share a story with you that is not about the what, but it's about the why of what we are making. And that story actually starts with John. John could be one of us, and he doesn't have that much money, but he's walking his dog. So that's what he does. And he is walking his dog in the public domain. So he likes to be out there. And every once in a while, he buys himself a cup of coffee in a cafe, because he saves some money for this one cup of coffee. And that's pretty accessible, because the front door of the cafe is part of the street. And that street not only contains his cafe, but also shops, apartment buildings, and that sort of thing. And we call it the shopping street, or our city centers. But one thing is happening with our city centers in Europe. And that is that we are actually building a wall around it. We are gathering facilities. And that means that the front door of John's cafe actually now has become the front door of the center. So his cafe has a second door. And that means that a cafe has become part of a commercial environment. And it's not that public after all. So for John, the back doors are visible. And when he's unlucky, there's a third door, and that's distance. So he needs to save money for the bus ride. And that actually means, when you add it all up, that he won't be out there that much. This is what we can see. We are lucky. And this is what some of the Johns of our community will be seeing. And this development was first described by Diane Girardeau in her book Architecture After Modernism. And I thought of this story when I was taking a subway ride back in the Oslo subway, the T-bane. And I heard this story about 3 little girls. I do understand a bit Norwegian, so watch out. And they were actually heading towards a very terrific destination. And so I decided to follow them because I had the same destination. We were off to Turk. And they were heading not towards these buildings, but towards this youth library. And there were kids standing in line, and I asked Reinhard, my client, because I had an appointment at the very same building. I said, is this the case every day? He said, well, kids are standing in line every day. Here are the girls. And why is this facility, this kids library, built there? It has a lot to do with the Munch Museum. As you probably know, this is part of Tøyen. But it's being rebuilt at another part of town, pretty close to Barcode. And that actually causes a risk for Tøyen Turk. Because what will happen, with the inclusiveness of this part of Oslo? When the tourists don't linger and don't blend into the society. So the city of Oslo actually decided to invest not only in upgrading the shopping center, but also in public services. So apparently there's a lot of potential in the intervention in the public domain with public services. And that made me think. So I created a team, and we started to talk to a lot of people that are all, influencing our societies with economics, psychologists, sociologists, etc. And what we learned from that, we gathered in this book. And I'll share that story with you. And it's about public facilities such as libraries or theaters or our sport facilities or our community centers or our culture houses, how could they actually act as a third place for all? So what are we talking about? If we're talking about public space, let's go back 2,000 years to Nolli. Nolli was a Roman architect, and he actually created this map. It's a pretty familiar map. Nolli did his work pretty well. And the white thing there is a street. Pretty obvious. And the black thing, that's a building. But if you look over here, well, probably a pointer doesn't seem to work, but you see that little round thing up there, that white round thing. Actually, it's the Pantheon. So Nolli teaches us that public space actually can exist within a building. And that is good news to John. Public space can actually be part of a building. If you're talking libraries and you ask an architect, what's a library? He'd probably say, well, okay, it's a building. And if you ask an interior architect, they will probably tell you it's a collection. And a librarian, well, they will tell you it's an institution. And all those three things actually are true, because that's what actually a library is. So we've been building those institutions with collections in buildings ever since we can remember. But back in the 80s, something happened. In the German library of Gütersloh, actually coffee entered the library building. So apparently, it's not only about books, but it's about, being there. And a couple of years later, the Münster Library was opened, and it did something with the book collection. It's not only just a book collection, but when Christmas is coming, they take that specific part of the book collection and display it. So apparently, a book collection could be adaptive. This is the Library of the Year in the Netherlands, back in 2000. It's pretty dull. But if you turn around, you'll see this. So something enters the library, and it probably is some kind of an experience. A couple of years later, soup entered the library in a cafe. And a couple of years later, libraries start to basically look like bookstores. And in 2013, red flags all over the place. What happens with our library? The first bookless library actually came around. But luckily enough, something has changed. And this was a library that was opened this year. So if you ask me what is a library, well, I think let's go back to UNESCO Manifesto. And that actually learns us that libraries are about creating inclusive societies and creating equal chances for everybody. Free access to information. The word book isn't in there. And if you ask an average commune, they will probably tell you, well, libraries, that's about the content, and good design, the way it looks, well, not that important. What's the third place? Let's go to this book. Ray Oldenburg, an American sociologist, he wrote this book back in '89. It's about bookstores, cafes, hairdressers, saloons, and everything in the heart of the society. Now, why did he write this book? He watched television, and he watched Cheers. You know that bar in Boston where those 7 people are taking, their drinks each and every day and telling the same jokes? And they enjoy it. And they know one thing for sure, they're going to be there the next day. And Oldenburg, he just realized, wait a minute, this all looks too familiar to me. So I probably need a place like that. And he called it, it's something similar to a home or the place where we work. But apparently it's not a home and it's not a place where we work. So we call it a third place. And a third place actually is where you feel safe, where you can go to alone. Where you feel at home, you can invite people to share it with you. Stay as long as you like, do whatever you want. They are usually around the corner, they're important to you, and most important thing, they're free. They're free. There they are. So a third place, probably it could be a park. or this hangout. And in our societies, we tend to see, those type of third places. If you ask Starbucks, are you in the coffee business? No, we're not in the coffee business. We're in the people's business serving coffee. That's what we do. And we are lucky. We can afford 50 NOK for a cup of coffee at the Starbucks, at Joe and the Juice, the Espresso House, the coffee company, and whatever they might be called. But how lucky is John? How lucky is John? And I think if we start creating places like this, we actually are creating a problem. And the problem is that the public domain increasingly becomes the territory of those who can afford being there, or those who got the money. And if this is the problem, there is a solution at our hand. And that solution is quite simple: reopen the public domain by using public services to do so. We can actually use our libraries, we can use our theaters, we can use our youth clubs, we can use our sport facilities, we can use our cultural houses, basically to reopen the public domain for the Johns of this world and make sure it's just as cool as the Starbucks next door, even cooler, because something's more going on there. So how do we do that? How do we basically create places like this and reopen the public domain? Most important force there out there, that's you. You're the taxpayers of this country, of this community. And so you can decide what you do with your money, right? Now, if you want to do so, we discovered there are more like 5 pillars that we can take care of. We should know about people, places, something called experience. We need to talk about programmability to make it future-proof. Now, let's start with people. This is how architects usually start. An average city in an average country. And we start analyzing the spot. But is that really what we need to see? This is the same map. Or a different map of the same city. The Johns, they are living in the red spots. Just over here. They don't have the money. This map actually shows you the amount of money behind the front door compared with the age group, based upon statistics. So John is the red guy, and probably his income is paid by the purple guys over there at that beautiful lake. So we need to know who we're actually dealing with if we're building public facilities, the haves or the have-nots. Is there a lot of new citizens? Are we dealing with a lot of elderly people or younger people? Single parent families. The divorce rate in the Netherlands is about 50%. That actually means that 50% of the people are moving to smaller houses, along the way, because the job rate doesn't grow that fast. And if houses get smaller, we need to use the public domain more. A lot of self-employed people. We got more spare time, and we like to share it with our families because we're getting older. So the public domain is used differently than it was like 20 years ago. Who are we dealing with? And I think we should take no assumptions. Architects are known for knowing everything, and I think we should not. A good friend of mine says, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. So we need to basically investigate in order to be able to connect with society. And then we need to realize that people actually give meaning to places. Architects don't. We create them. But people give meaning to places. Now let's talk about those places. This is an average library. It could be anywhere. This is an average library. It could be anywhere. It's like, the shopping street, could be anywhere. This is Cologne, this is Amsterdam, could be anywhere. But isn't it, should it not be our task to basically create somewheres, places that actually can be only here in Ulsteinvik? Because if I'm telling you that I'm off to Paris for the weekend, I bet basically everybody got this image in their head. So the Eiffel Tower creates a mental address. And by creating mental addresses, making strong places, strong interiors, we actually create a mental address that makes it easier to connect to the facility and start the journey towards Paris already in our head, because this is such a strong image. That's why London builds this guy, or Valencia makes this. And even the commercial parties are creating, you know, those icons, those temples for the brands. We probably all know this guy. It's a temple for localism, in a way. We make strong images because it's easier to connect, not only in Oslo, but also in Ulsteinvik. So places are important. They turn, if we do it right, they turn an anywhere into a somewhere. Because we need to realize communities compete, whether you like it or not. So icons help us to create mental addresses. And places facilitate reasons to stay. And a good place can be a part of the story. Wow, pretty cool here. What do you think? Well, who are you, actually? You know, but I like it here. Cup of coffee, that's what places can do. They create a mental new experience. So let's look into experience. And I like to go back to this book that was written by James Gilmore and Joseph Pine, The Experience Economy. Now there's a lot of interesting stuff in this book, but let's take just one thing. Because they are very helpful to us, actually. You know, back in the old days, this is what we were doing. We were creating commodities, you know, in the agricultural economy. And when we start, you know, developing and let's start, the industrial age came around. So we start making products. And when we customized our products, they turned into services. But then something happened, and that actually changed everything. The internet came around. There's good news to John. His dog died. So now there was no need to go outdoors. So he basically could do anything, buy any commodity, any product, any service online. So why should John go out there? Why should he go out there? And the answer that Pine and Gilmore give us is experience. Create experiences. Because people don't buy products, they actually are after new experiences and memories. And for the first time in history, a product of economic value actually exists within the user. This is a product, and it became a service when it was brought to me. And now, when I drink it, it's an experience because I'm doing it with you. So experiences are quite powerful. That's why zoos turn into experiences, or pizzerias in average cities, or tea rooms. You know, they blend in with flower shops. Or we drink whiskey at 10 a.m. in the morning because it's such a great experience. We eat our food in nice food trucks. We pay more for the cucumbers because our mental experience is so good when there's no packaging. We create those type of offices and those type of libraries because it's just cool to do your homework in an old ski cabin. So experience, it's a very important tool. We live in the experience economy, whether we like it or not, and memory has become a product. So if you want to stay relevant, no matter what you do, you need to start collecting experiences, because that's what people expect from you. Collect experiences. But what differs a library from the Starbucks? The one thing that a library has and a Starbucks does not is a program, an activity. Now, if you're talking about, as designers, about programs, you know, we're used to, you know, hire a bunch of consultants and write it down in a design brief. Because we learned for the last 100 years that, you know, form follows function. So if we write down everything that we need, you'll get the form, right? The problem with public services is that we tend to talk about it so long. When I won the contest for the interior design of the Hague City Library back in '92, it was opened in '95, and the design brief was written in '72. So actually, we all opened a time machine, right? And I think that's a risk. So we need a different approach here. And I think Andy Warhol could help us, starting to understand what's going on. And he said, everybody is going to be famous for like 15 minutes. 50 minutes in a lifetime, 50 minutes a day. You know, in the Facebook time here, probably 50 minutes a day, because we actually think we are more important. We think we as an individual, we are more important because we know more. And we like to do more. Do-it-yourself has become the new norm. And this is our university. And by doing it ourselves, you know, it gives actually a great meaning to us. So probably we need places. We need places where we actually can share what we think is important. Places to just share happiness of life. Places to help people, or places to make stuff. Or places where we can learn from people that are learning themselves, or places where we can transfer knowledge to the next generation, places where we can actually participate in things that are going on in our society, or places that actually help us to react on things that we dislike in our society. Places to actually show what we can. This is a very small stage back in Tøyen, only 4 times 4 meters. And when Reinhard asked me, he said, Aat, I need a stage. I said, well, you know, this place is going to be 6 times as big. You know, you don't have any staff to basically program this stage. He said, I don't need the staff, I just need a stage. So this stage was built, and it was equipped with everything that you might expect from a stage. And the first year it was opened, it was programmed like 340 times. 340 times in the first year, not by Reinhard and his staff, but by the people using it. The people from Tøyen actually liked this stage. So a program attracts and adds relevance. And that is what creates the experience. And that can bring people together. So we need basically to start designing for programmability and to basically accept that we don't know it all. But that's the cool thing. This is another cool thing. So could you start up the slideshow again? I'll tell about the next step is how to make anything future-proof. Thank you. How to make it future-proof. A little story. I got 2 boys, and one of them came home from school one day and he was soaking wet. Rained cats and dogs. He said, Dad, I'm going to Kevin. I said, well, Kevin, you know, that's pretty obvious. He lives next door to school. So why did you start biking all the way to our house, which is half an hour, and then go back again? He said, well, you know, I'm not going back again. This is my bike. So we fired up his PlayStation, and he met Kevin, you know, behind that shed in the Abu Dhabi desert. So this little son of us, you know, 10 years old, not only being in the Abu Dhabi desert, but also here, out of this world. So if we are creating places, public places for the Digi natives, we need to understand that they have a different reference. So they might have a different expectation. And we probably need new techniques. So as you can see over here, augmented or virtual reality to cater for this future and to create places that actually are cool to them too. So virtuality meets reality. And the new people that do have new references and thus new expectations. So this layering, that's about the most interesting thing that we have here. So 5 things. People. People give meaning to places. The place is always part of the story. People don't buy products, they are after memories. We need to start designing for programmability in order to make it future-proof. 5 quotes from Ivar Moltke, a personal friend of the director of Aarhus, Rolf Hapel. Places start to change. Places start to change. It used to be meeting information. and now is meeting people. Arranged events become things that just happen. Neutral becomes emotional. Otherwise, people just won't get there. And this is beautiful. Users actually become the resources of those places. Users become resources. So, a couple examples. I'll skip through them. If you'd like to know more, please just shoot me an email. So where do we do that? This is a large example. Public programming in Bryant Park in New York. It used to be a desolated place. 10 years in time, it now turns into a place for free programming. 50% is educational, 50% recreational. And the real estate value of all the real estate surrounding Bryant Park has gone up tremendously. So there's economic value in public programming. Does it need to be this big? No. This is about the smallest third place in the Netherlands. It's just this little tiny building here, Bongema. And that activates basically the whole environment. It can be very small. You don't need money, you just need an idea. We saw it earlier today. The most, the biggest company in the world actually is starting to conquer our public space with public programming today at Apple. We need to realize that. They are providing public programming within a commercial environment. Bad news to John. It can be a blend of public programming, such as the Story House in Chester shows us. It's a blend of a cinema, a theater, a cafe, a restaurant, and a library that actually activates Chester downtown, a huge success. Biblioteket, a youth library that activates this place for the kids. And this Stofner Library. I'll show you a very brief video of this video. When we start talking to the Stofner people and investigating who were we actually dealing with, we discovered that 90% of the people using this library were actually there with a reason, and that reason was meeting other people. In the morning, there were like 150 parents, grandparents with their little kids. In the afternoon, 150, 200 school kids, teenagers. And in the evenings, there were like same amount of people with their knitting clubs, chess clubs, etc. We had one problem: we weren't able to create a place for 600 people. So we actually started to create this social place. And when we talked, we learned that they basically love the countryside. So we decided to create this interior park. And that's what you see here. There's more to see online. But those places, I like to call it places for localism, where people are invited to meet, where they feel welcome. So, a short recap. What have we seen here? What did I try to tell you? Because what did we learn? It used to be like this. Our municipalities, most of our municipalities, think that the DNA of a public program, public services, is about the content. But I think if you really want to hit the spot, the context is just as important. So contextual design, who are we dealing with? What are the people using it? Who are the neighbors? What are the stakeholders? What's the local genius loads high? You need to take that into account. And that is good news to John, because then there will exist new, open and public spaces within the heart of our community. And that creates a vital community. So here's a brief checklist. Know your users, who you're dealing with, and start creating mental addresses. Make them free, accessible, like the best third places. Create meaningful experiences. Mix program and services. merge public with commercial, make it future-proof, and put mental health first. Put mental health first. I think in this part of the world we need to, because we all deserve it, not only John. And then it will become informal, inspiring, personal and attractive, relevant to all, a somewhere rather than an anywhere. And that is a place to stay. That is a third place for all. Public services as social cement in vital societies. A huge chance for all of us. Thank you for sharing your time.